Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a short story that is about magical shawls and also concentration camps. I am referring to The Shawl, which was published in 1980 by Cynthia Ozick, and also turned into a longer format novel in 1989. Just to start here, I just wanted to let you know that I will be talking about 1, Nazis, 2, infanticide, which is unfortunately a spoiler for something that happens in the story, and 3, just human suffering in general. So if those things are something that you might not be okay with, you can definitely, pause off, not watch this video, because I'm going to be talking about those things, unfortunately. So Cynthia Ozick is a Jewish American writer, having written throughout the 1900s and well into the present day. Her last published book was in 2021, and she is 94 years old, which is pretty impressive to be continuing writing at that age. She frequently writes about the Jewish life, as well as about the Holocaust and the consequences and after effects of it, which you see here in The Shawl, as I had just mentioned a bit earlier. She's won a number of awards for her work, and again, she still seems to be active in getting her stuff published. I would like to read some of her longer format novels, maybe not to The Shawl because of how depressing it is, but maybe some of her other work, just to see, what she's thinking about in the present day with all these attacks on Jews, even though in the past too, like in the Holocaust and even after that, there were still attacks on Jews because there's one thing that human society enjoys, it's targeting Jewish folk. Without further ado, let's talk about The Shawl. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Shawl focuses on 3 characters, although the main character is Rosa. She is a mother living in Europe during World War II, apparently. It doesn't really do a good job of telling you that or setting up the story. A lot of this is like me trying to parse things out after the fact and looking at a summary of what other people have noted. It also focuses on Magda, her child, and Stella, her niece, which again, that wasn't said. I had to figure that out after the fact. But they are all marching to a concentration camp, a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. There is no food for them, so they're all starving. Rosa doesn't really have any food to give to Magda, and so her breast milk is drying out. And all Magda has to really eat all she has is like she can suck on the linen from a magic shawl, which seems to sustain Magda, at least in Rosa's eyes, although it's very well possible that she's delusional and this shawl brings no magic whatsoever. And Stella is growing hungry as well, and she even says the word Aryan at Magda, which Rosa perceives as a threat, and she believes that Stella might try to cannibalize Magda if given the chance because she is so hungry. And so once they arrive at the concentration camp, and even along the way, Rosa has been hiding Magda under the shawl, basically carrying her on her chest. And when she gets to the concentration camp, she hides her with the shawl. And Magda doesn't really cry or make any noise. It might have something to do with her vocal cords. It might just be the case that this baby, doesn't really cry that much. Or at all, or really say anything, especially given these hard times, and it's not really getting the nutrients the baby needs. Rosa is able to successfully hide Magda for a period of time, But unfortunately, Stella has grown so cold that she takes the shawl away from the baby. And afterwards, she notes that she's never able to maintain warmth. So this is kind of a curse for her. But she takes the shawl away, and at one point, Magda begins crying. Rosa hears this and runs to go grab the shawl from Stella, and then tries to make her way over to where Magda is. But unfortunately, the guards hear Magda, pick her up, and toss her towards the electric fence, which kills Magda in the process. And Rosa can hear the shouts from the electric fence, which Stella claims are an illusion, but like Magda can hear the words like "mama" coming from the fence, which drives her into a huge period of suffering. And so as the story comes to a close, Rosa realizes she can't really do anything about this, because if she runs or tries to pick up the baby, she's going to be shot by the guards. And so all she can do is bury her face into the shawl and cry and release her suffering that way. And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, this is a very grief-stricken and depressing story here. And I didn't realize at the start of it that it was going to turn into this direction. But here we are. I guess it's important to talk about, the weird and sad stories, as well as the weird and unusual and positive stories. Although I do think on this channel I tend to talk about a lot more sad short stories than I do positive short stories. But that's just the nature of the times we're living in, I suppose. So, like, one of the ideas that Ozick is talking about here is suffering and the Holocaust. Ozick frequently talked about the Holocaust, and here you see that right here, where Rosa and her family and a whole bunch of other Jewish and oppressed folks, because it wasn't simply the Jewish who were being targeted, it was also the Roma, as well as a couple of other minority groups in Europe at the time. They're all being marched to this deadly concentration camp. They're given no food. There's the threat of death if they step out of line, if they're caught hiding children or something like that. They face the threat of death. The Nazi soldiers will not hesitate to shoot them, and that is like found in history. That is exactly what the Nazis did. So it's a very morbid time for these individuals, where they're reminded that maybe the people in charge don't view them as human beings, and they're starving to death, and this is all being done in order to exterminate this group. And then at near the end of the story, Rosa begins thinking about the electric fence, how she can hear sounds coming from it that are all suffering and filled with sadness, which Stella asserts is an illusion, but Rosa believes is real. And when Magda is thrown into the electric fence, she can hear the sounds of mama, something like that, coming from the electric fence, sort of highlighting the suffering that they're living in. Like, this electric fence represents all the horrors done to the people in this concentration camp, and apparently only Rosa can hear it. And the end of the story is like the guards kill Magda, and all Rosa can do is scream into this blanket, because if she tries to approach the guards or does anything, like even recognizing that Magda was her child, Rosa is going to be shot by the guards. And it really highlights the unfortunate nature of the Holocaust. And you can certainly think, like, what comes after this, like, what's going to happen for Rosa if she's able to escape the concentration camp? What's going to happen to Stella, who feels some suffering about it as well? And I think that's something that Ozick explores in the longer format novel. I'm not really sure how much I want to read that, because again, it's going to be crushingly depressing. Living with the knowledge that your child was murdered during the Holocaust. Like, how do you move on from that? Like, how do you live with the fact that your fellow humans just straight up took your child and tossed it into electrical fence, only because some man high up, like, believed that Jews and various other minority groups in Europe weren't worthy of rights like everyone else. It's really harsh. That's really unfortunate and really shows the nature of human suffering. And there's consequences afterwards, because not everyone died in the concentration camps. People had to move on with their lives after the fact. And then another idea that Ozick talks about here is motherhood. Of course, Rosa is behaving as a mother to Magda, of course, because Magda is her child. But she's also behaving as a mother towards Stella, even though Stella is her niece. She feels a sense of love and a sense of duty because Stella probably has nobody else. But much like with Magda, Rosa can't really feed this child. They're stuck marching to a concentration camp. Everything is out of her control, and she really has no option. So she's trying her best to provide for these children, but she has nothing to give them but her support, I guess. Like the knowledge that things might get better down the road, but I don't even think Rosa believes that things will get better or anything like that. I think it's just a bleak situation for everyone involved. And because Rosa has no option, she relies on this magic shawl. This magic shawl is the one thing that can provide that what she can't, which is food for Magda. Because Magda can suck on this magical shawl and with its magical linen and get sustenance. I don't know what kind of sustenance. I don't know if this is actually happening. Given the reality of everything, it's probably not providing the child with anything, but it's enough to keep the child quiet until they get out of the concentration camp, or until the child dies on their own, which I think Rosa understands, because the child, like Magda, seems to be getting skinnier, and she's going to die at some point. And Stella is hoping to feed on Magda after she dies, because cannibalism is really your only option to eat anything in this situation. And it really goes back to the suffering, but it also goes back to how Rosa is trying to do anything to provide for Magda in this difficult situation. And it's also really interesting because at the end of the story, as Magda is about to die, she calls out Mama. Magda hasn't said anything, presumably because her vocal cords have been injured, or presumably because the baby is suffering from malnutrition and it doesn't really have the energy to say anything. And so for the only words the baby to say are Mama, Mama, shows the bond between Rosa and Magda. And unfortunately how the Nazi soldiers who kill Magda are ultimately tearing apart that bond, destroying motherhood, especially Jewish motherhood, in their terrible actions in this story. It's really interesting that besides the crying at the end of the story, that's the only thing we ever see Magda say. So it's clear that Ozick wants you to see the bond of motherhood in this story. Especially as the story comes to an end, there's a fascinating quote that I would like to read to you. She only stood because if she ran, they would shoot, and if she tried to pick up the sticks of Magda's body, they would shoot, and if she let the wolf's screech ascending now through the ladder of her skeleton break out, they would shoot. So she took Magda's shawl and filled her own mouth with it, stuffed it in, and stuffed it in, until she was swallowing up the wolf's screech and tasting the cinnamon and almond depth of Magda's saliva, and Rosa drank Magda's shawl until it dried. And there you see the ultimate symbol of motherhood there, where the mother is now sucking on this magical shawl in order to heal her own trauma, in order to symbolize the thing that she lost, which is Magda in this situation. And I really like how Ozick gets at motherhood here, but also it's a very clear demonstration of the suffering here, where Rosa really doesn't have any way to express the pain besides using the magical shawl, because she can't pick up Magda's body, she can't approach the soldiers, she can't do anything. And this is a really horrible story that is ultimately benefited through Ozick's writing. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Shawl by Cynthia Ozick. A pretty amazing short story, pretty depressing short story given its content. But I think that Ozick's writing really knocks it out of the park, and it it really has nested in my soul. Even as I was reading it, I felt that it spoke to me in some way. That's going to make it hard to forget as time goes on. I definitely recommend that you out there go seek it out, because it's always important to read about the Holocaust, even though some people would like you to read about both sides of the Holocaust. It's important to remember that one side was being exterminated and the other side was a group of fascists who thought it was okay to exterminate another group of human beings. And so that's all it ever is. No matter how much someone tries to convince you that the Nazis were worried about economics or the Nazis saw immigration as a big problem, they ultimately saw these things as such big problems that it was worthy to exterminate another group of people. So do not ever listen to the fascist because they are fascist, because they are nationalists who only seek to harm and exterminate groups that they do not believe deserve equal rights. And so, yeah, I definitely recommend, again, that you go out and read it. Comment below if this stood out to you, if this was something you enjoyed, or if you had read it before. I would love to have a discussion with you on this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about Cynthia Ozick if they do not already know, as well as this story, which you can find in the New Yorker. I'll put a link to it in the description. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and concentration-y camp travels. Farewell.